There are two things that ops cannot do for you. One is be the police. Sales leadership needs to be the police.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing they can't do is build process in a vacuum.
Welcome to the Full Funnel Freedom Podcast. If you are listening to this, you are likely leading a team responsible for generating revenue. Purpose of Full Funnel Freedom is to support people like yourself and keep your funnels consistently, reliably full. Welcome to the Full Funnel Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Hamish. Today, I am delighted to have Taft Love as my guest today. Taft is the founder of Iceberg, a sales and marketing operations agency that helps growing companies transform their go-to-market operations. Before tech, he was a police officer, a federal investigator, and a sales guy. Today, he lives in Austin, Texas, likes flying airplanes and perfecting homemade pizza when he's not spending time with his family. Taft, welcome to Full Funnel Freedom.
Hey, thanks so much. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, it's great to reconnect with you. And so I've given the audience, the 30,000 foot view, who you are. Tell us the story of Taft, where you came from, what you're doing now, where you're going. Take us away.
You got it, man. I'll go deep here. Small town, North Carolina. Grew up, was a cop for a while, about almost 10 years, and went overseas for a little while. And when I came back, I kind of fell ass backwards into a sales job, cold calling for as an SDR for a small SaaS company. Wow. Got the job off Craigslist. Had no knowledge of SaaS or startups or anything. It was just like somebody who would hire me to do something.
Wow.
And that sort of snowballed into this career that I've been really fortunate to have now that spans startups some people have heard of, PandaDoc, Smart Recruiters, DocSend, which was acquired by Dropbox, and my current gig is founder of Iceberg, and so that I guess is worth kind of double clicking into that, which is totally. I was an SDR and then an account executive, and it was at PandaDoc where I figured out, hey, I can't be successful with what exists here, and I think every sales guy at every small startup, sales guy or gal at every small startup has felt this before. You really don't have the tools when it's, you've just graduated from founder selling into being early salespeople and marketing people at a startup, and not because anybody is not doing their job. There's nobody at fault here. You just don't have the systems around you to be successful. And so I sort of became the ops guy at PandaDoc, and straddled sales leadership and operations leadership for years after that. I did the same thing at Smart Recruiters. At DocSend, I was pretty pure sales, and then at Dropbox, ops again. And so that's been my my path since, is sort of straddling these two worlds, and frankly, they reinforce each other. It's a virtuous cycle. If you've been in seed as a sales or marketer, then doing RevOps is much easier. You have the empathy that pure ops people might not have.
Very fair. I once did a talk called "Sales is from Mars and Operations is from Venus," and this was years ago, and it went over really well because it was a room full of CEOs from a bunch of IT companies, and they're like, "Yep, that's pretty much how it works." So clearly, you saw a gap in the market, right, to straddle these two. So where should we start in terms of this, making sales and operations actually coexist, not just in a sort of a détente fashion, but like, hey, we like each other. We're here to support each other. What's the first thing that we should be considering as sales leaders when we're thinking through this process?
Yeah, I think two super high level pieces of advice for sales leaders, because at most small startups, sales has more budget than anyone else. They're the ones who are first able to pull in an ops hire or an agency to do ops for them. And that's fine. You don't need to be you don't need a true RevOps function when you're really small. You just need like whoever can get the friggin' job done. And so the two things I would say you should do is, first, hire ops people who either have deep sales experience or have deep experience sitting with the sales team and understanding how they work. Because sales and ops that don't talk to each other and don't work together, literally sitting together at the same desk and watching where someone clicks. If you don't do that, you're already at a huge disadvantage. And the second thing is invest in operations early. The longer you crowdsource and figure out ops on your own, even if you're very, very smart, the more likely you're building massive technical and systems and process debt that you're going to have to pay off down the line as the pressure builds. When you have a board breathing down your neck and you can't get them the numbers they need, that is not the time to start thinking about getting your first ops resources together.
Yeah, we eventually the Franken stack that we've built is going to completely fall apart, right? So let's define ops very quickly, because we talk RevOps, we talk ops can be as big or as small as we want it to be, and right now you're clearly helping founders with their go-to-market motions, right? So what in your world, or what would you recommend we start with for ops, quote unquote?
Earliest version of ops. Despite what all the gurus tell you about what ops should be and how it should work, the earliest version is people who design process and implement systems to support those processes. That's it. That is ops in a nutshell. It will grow into owning more and more over time. Ops becomes enablement. But honestly, if you've just hired your first sales team, you're a brand new VP of sales, dude, you need to own enablement. You need to be able to train those reps. You can't go tack that on to operations. And similarly, finance, like sales finance, the VP and the CEO are just going to have to get together and model out what's coming for the next year for their board. You probably don't have the money to go hire a qualified sales finance operations person to be part of your RevOps program. So early on, process and systems, and that's it. And then it grows to sort of swallow these other tangentially related operations functions that your first couple years can just live with the leadership.
Fair enough. And so ultimately, there could be a temptation for a new sales leader to be like, I'm just going to abdicate, right? Just push that over there. But ultimately, what I'm hearing from you is, as that sales leader, we got to own it. And then we've got to get the processes and systems in place before we start all the other fancy stuff that is eventually going to come when we transition to enablement. Is that accurate?
That's exactly right. Look, if you want to do sales, if you just want to run deals and manage people and be a pure sales leader, then go to 1,000+ person company and go to a place where everyone is a cog in a well-run machine.
Right.
If you want to work in early stage land, you are many, many things. And every single one of those you decide to outsource is a huge risk for you. And so be very careful about which ones you hand off early to people who you're able to afford when you're at 5 million, 10 million run rate.
Fair enough. So first place, we got to get an ops function. We've got to get systems and processes. All right, now let's build this up. So yay, we're starting to scale. Yay, our salespeople are sitting next to ops. They love each other. What happens next?
Next thing you need to do is write down what people do. Everyone skips this. You're moving so fast, it's all institutional knowledge, and then the wrong person leaves and suddenly everyone is screwed. So write it down. And this does not have to be particularly difficult. There is so much tech now, and I am not a tools first guy. This may come out more as we talk. I'm not a tools first guy, but there's some really interesting things happening in the market right now where these teams, Rattle is a good example, that are combining the building and the documentation in a single tool. So the interface you use to build a process serves as your documentation. So it's getting easier and easier and easier to write down how things are supposed to work and what the various systems are doing within these processes. And even if you don't have a Rattle, get a Miro, get a Lucid chart, and just draw what is happening. So that's the next step, and which is sort of a precursor to true enablement.
Sales leaders, AI is here, and it means that sales is evolving. Is your sales team? Download our new guide on AI and sales, and you will learn how to support your sellers in leveraging AI to gain a competitive advantage, communicate more effectively with their buyers, and ultimately sell more with less effort. Go to fullfunnelfreedom/AI to get your copy today. That's fullfunnelfreedom.com/AI. Fair enough. Yeah, we coach the leaders that we work with. Just do one thing. Put one thing down. It does not have to, you don't have to go lock yourself away for 3 days and come back with, very current reference, a phone book's worth of documentation. Just one thing gets the motion going. So when we're looking at documentation, who should that documentation come from? Like, are we going out and interviewing our top reps and going, hey, how do you work through these motions? Or are we making it up out of our own head about what our ideal state should look like? Where do you see the best practices coming out from documentation standpoint?
There are two things that ops cannot do for you. One is be the police. Sales leadership needs to be the police.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing they can't do is build process in a vacuum. So everybody makes this mistake, me included, early in my career. You decide how everything should work, you design it, you build everything around it, and then you put real humans in it who don't do it. And it reminds me of there's this image, and I've struggled to find it in the past few years, but it's like the perfect representation of an ops mistake. It's this path with a gate covering the path, and then in the grass it's worn where people have just like walked around the gate and nobody goes down the path as it was designed, and that is what happens when you build in a vacuum. And so if you started out right, like we talked about, ops people come in and they build deep empathy for what sales is doing and why, and what are the, because everyone is responding to some incentive when they have a behavior. Don't ignore that, and don't decide that just saying that we do things differently is actually going to lead to different behavior. And so what you should be documenting is what is happening today, and then nudge that behavior with aligned incentives in certain directions versus what most startups do. And in fact, a lot of big companies do, which is we're throwing out all this behavior. Here's what we do today. Yes. And then you come back a month later, and now the same thing's happening. It's just not recorded in the systems because the systems are built for something we're ignoring.
110%. So let's dive into that a little bit deeper. So let's say we've got a sales leader who's listening to this who is thinking, oh, I'm like a couple of stages past where Taft is talking about, and I'm feeling a lot of pain right now. So in terms of like, you know, the rescue squad, if you want to call it, where would you coach a sales leader to start looking in their ops side if they feel a little bit of pain right now based on the things that you've shared with us already?
You have three choices. One of them is just plain wrong. Two are good, in my opinion. The wrong choice that so many pick is, hey, I've got this SDR who's kind of struggling at being an SDR, but she's really smart. So like she can do that stuff. And I see it everywhere. And Iceberg has made literally millions of dollars off of the cleanup, post cleanup that was done by the person who was very smart, but didn't know the answers to the test.
Right.
And so that's option one. Throw it out. Don't do it. It seems like a great idea, and it saves you from having to let somebody go who's not working out, but stop. Don't do it. The next two are hire a qualified in-house operations person to help fix this, or hire an agency that specializes on whatever stage your company is in. And that is really, really important. Focus on your stage. Do not come hire Iceberg if you are a Series D company that just raised $100 million and you need some help transforming a process that you have technical debt within. Go nimbly for that. They're like above market from us and really good at that. If you're a Series A, you just raised your A, you're a year late in doing some of this stuff, and you have technical debt, but you're still small, you have 10 salespeople, call Iceberg or hire in-house.
Sure.
And there is no clean answer to which you should do it. It really boils down to which you're more comfortable with. I don't think there's actually a wrong answer here. The thing to remember is there's potentially more risk with in-house. If you hire the wrong person, you've got a 6-month time to like manage them out, hire someone else, get them spun up, stuff like that. So we're easier to scale up or fire, but you're not building institutional knowledge when you hire us. So there are pros and cons with each. But those are your three options, and I'm happy to send you, if you'd like to have it as a link, an ebook we wrote about how to hire that first person if you decide to do it in-house. Like literally, what questions do you ask them when you talk to them?
Perfect. Yes, we'll put the link to that in the show notes. So, sales leaders, as you are listening, click the link, download the ebook, and get some insights from Taft on how to hire that right person. Because cost of a bad hire, I often use salesperson examples. We had one leader work out; it was $2.2 million to recruit, hire, onboard, and eventually terminate a bad fit seller. And the number, I believe, is somewhere between 4.5 and 6.2 times base salary for any role in the organization. So sales leaders, think of a role in your team, multiply their base salary by 4.5 and then separately by 6.2. That's usually a lot of money that we don't want to blow over, right? Like if we were gambling with that amount of money, we wouldn't want to gamble with it. So download that link that will be in the show notes for you. Okay, so we've got stage 1, stage 2. We've talked a little. We've got a little bit of like, okay, troubleshooting or what can we do here? So then, how do we transition this from operations to enablement? That was something you brought up earlier. And so eventually ops becomes enablement. What does that look like and what does it mean to a sales leader?
That's a great question. I think enablement sort of takes two paths. Once you start growing, enablement bifurcates into sort of technical, internal, ops-focused enablement. What systems do we have? How do we use them? Where do you click? So there's the sort of tactical enablement. And then there's also a tactical element to this, but it's the sort of market enablement. How do we sell? Who do we talk to? How do we talk to them? They don't necessarily need two different owners, but generally what happens is the first one happens first. And then the second one, the first one gets its own hire first. The ops team starts doing that. And the second one, the VP of sales and VP of marketing and their team sort of own that enablement until you're able to hire an enablement team. And so I sort of think of these happening in two different stages, but in a perfect world, yeah, you're long before you have a true enablement professional helping teach your reps how to teach. You need somebody who owns just documenting what exists and where we click and how we do it.
Right.
And then there are so many factors, it's hard to say there's a specific time, but usually late Series A, early Series B is when companies in the SaaS world or at, $5 to $10 million in the non-SaaS world of annual revenue get to a place where they're hiring that dedicated sort of sales enablement person who's teaching sellers how to sell versus where to click.
Love it. Very, very cool. So Taft, what is another warning sign that a leader should look for once they've got that resource in place, right? So you shared earlier, at some point you have to do it, fair. And at some point you're going to bring on somebody or you're going to have it in an agency. What would be a bit of an early leading indicator that this maybe is not working the way that it should be, that a sales leader should watch out for?
If you are not regularly frustrated because they're telling you no, you made the wrong hire.
Okay, say more about that.
This is not what you do. Let me tell you a story about like the horrible cycle that we step into over and over and over at Iceberg to fix, to break. And so let's take that early SDR who wasn't doing well, but she's really smart. So you move her into an ops role and she goes and gets a Salesforce admin certification and gets a few HubSpot certifications. And she's really sharp, even though she's never done this before and doesn't know the answers to the test. What's going to happen in almost every scenario is you are going to start using her to speed up all of the things you were doing before. And she's not telling you no because the dynamic is not one of partnership. It's this person is now doing things faster than I can do it myself, but it's still making manifest my vision as a non-ops person. And you're going to notice they're firefighting a lot, but nobody here, it's the blind leading the blind. You as the VP of sales don't understand why the firefighting's happening. You just know things are breaking a lot. And you know that when you point her to it, she's smart. So she goes and fixes it and that fires out and yay, she's the hero. And she is incentivized to do two things, work quickly and firefight. She gets pats on the back for both of those things.
Right.
And what she does not get kudos for is the thing ops team should be doing, which is saying, hey, everybody, time out, stop. Why are we firefighting? Why is this thing breaking over and over? Where is there misalignment between process and systems and reporting? And so a qualified head of ops, I wrote an article a couple of years ago that was something about how the most important skill for an ops leader is saying no.
Mm-hmm.
And you really have to be able to treat the people at the executive level around you as a partner.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to prioritize and force their prioritization.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have your own vision for how this should all work together that that allows them to assign you outcomes and not tasks. So if you're assigning tasks to your ops person, even early stage,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have the right level, and you are gonna. Bill Gates has the quote about something to the effect of like automating a bad process just makes the bad stuff happen faster. And I butchered the quote, but that's the idea.
Yeah.
Same with hiring an ops person. Like, you were making mistakes as a VP of sales that you maybe didn't even recognize, and then you hire an ops person who's too junior and doesn't know the answers to the test or how to tell you no.
Mm-hmm.
All you did is poured gas on this dumpster fire.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really sounds like there's got to be some humility and vulnerability on the part of the sales leader to empower that ops person, because ultimately, whether they are a brand new SDR or they've got decades of experience in ops and you bring them on, the leader has to be willing to hear no. And if the leader's not willing to hear no, as you just said, we're just going to pour gasoline on a dumpster fire.
100%.
So Taft, I'm digging this conversation because I love the human to human dynamic, and I love the fact that you're very focused on uniting two groups that are often, if not at war with each other, just sort of cold war with each other.
Yeah.
And certainly could talk to you about this all day. I do have a few questions before we wrap up. And the first one being, if you could go back and coach your younger self, right? So go back to younger Taft and go, hey, younger Taft, you're going to be the founder of this amazing company called Iceberg, and da 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 da. You're also going to have a bunch of bumps and bruises and scar tissue. What would you coach younger self to do to arrive at the same place, but with fewer bumps and bruises and less scar tissue?
I would say be less patient about the day-to-day and more patient about the long term. That was a mistake I made, and I think a lot of people make. You're impatient about the next promotion and
Yes.
your career advancement, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not sufficiently impatient about like the task list that needs to be done today. And so while it's counterintuitive, if you flip that, your career moves faster. And so one is be way more impatient about the day to day. And I think I take this from Josh Braun, who I just like love all his stuff. And the thing he says over and over and over again is disconnect from the outcome. And that's true in sales with cold calling. It's also true in operations. It's true in everything. Do the process well, do it right, and stick to it, and slow down and get it right. And don't worry about whether the outcome was exactly what you expected, but sort of trust and respect the process.
Yeah.
And that also speaks to the patience thing. And so those are two things I think I got wrong early, that if I had it to do over again, it would allow my younger self to carry less stress and get more done.
Love it. Very cool. What an amazing answer. Other question for you. What have you read, listened to, watched, whether recently or in your past, that you would encourage our audience of sales leaders to check out to further their own development?
This is an interesting one because I have intentionally lately stopped reading sales books and all of the. I spent years like packing my brain with stuff that I sort of question the value of overdoing it. So I've been on a bubblegum reading spree that has actually like helped free up a bunch of brain space.
Cool.
And when I go back to sales books, the very first one I'm going to read is Jeff Gitomer's Little Red Book of Selling. I like that book because it is philosophical and reinforces something that I truly believe is super important with selling, which is be helpful and have a mindset of plenty. If you do those two things, you're gonna succeed at sales, because being helpful takes more than just being a nice person. Being helpful in selling means you have to be an expert. You can't be helpful if you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Totally. If you don't understand their problems and their market and your systems or whatever you're selling and how they work together. So be helpful and have a mindset of plenty. No commission breath, just like be there to help, and people will buy more from you than otherwise. And so that's the book I would focus on if I like decided to go back into reading sales books today.
Love it. Very cool. That is a great book. I've read it myself. I saw Jeff speak here in Calgary several years ago. And the big thing I took away from him is someone said, well, how can you what time is it when you're traveling? And he said, well, I know it's called either daytime or nighttime. And I know by looking out the window. And I was like, what a very good answer, Jeff. Well played, sir. All right. Last question for you, Taft. You've given us so many great ideas and insights already on how to meld sales and operations together. What do you have for a closing thought, a bit of wisdom, or something to plug? The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, the biggest thing I would say is if you're interested in learning a little more about operations, a thing we're doing now is completely free hour-long session with me, not my team. I don't push this off on someone else. Like you can sit down with me for an hour and talk about whatever operational stuff you're dealing with. So if you're struggling with sales ops, come talk to me. You can go to our website, icebergops.com, fill out a form. We're not going to spam you. We're not going to call you a bunch. You can just set a time to come talk to me. And we will talk through whatever the hell you're dealing with. And you don't have to buy from me. I hope you do. I'd love that, but you do not have to. And we can leave with a game plan for you to go hire somebody to implement or do yourself or have us come help you with. And so that's the thing I'd like to plug. And otherwise, invest earlier in ops and get good ops talent. It's worth its weight in gold.
Very cool. We'll certainly put a link to Iceberg's website in the show notes so you can quickly and easily access that if you'd like to get more of Taft's amazing wisdom. So Taft, I've had a blast. I look forward to continuing our conversation offline. Thank you for being a guest on Full Funnel Freedom today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sales leaders, I had a blast talking with Taft today. In my career, sales and operations, if they have not actually been at war, it's been a cold war, like I said in the episode. And I really found that his insights on how to unite sales and ops, and especially from a sales leadership perspective, we can't abdicate this role. And especially if we're in that early stage startup, or if we're into a larger company that maybe has never had an official ops or enablement program before, we can't abdicate it. We've got to get in, figure out what needs to be done, what are the outcomes, and then bring someone on board. I also want to reinforce that idea of we have to give our team members, and this is all team members, but we're specifically talking about ops today, we have to give them the permission and the protection to challenge us and to say no to us, because ultimately we have an outcome, we have a target, we have growth, we have scale that we need to hit. And also we hired our team members for a reason. So we need to give them the permission, the protection, the freedom, and the flexibility to be able to push back and say, hey, boss, I get that you want to get to that mountaintop and you're telling me to do it in this way. There might be a better way to do it. Or, hey, I get that you just had a flash of brilliance in the middle of the night and you want me to completely adjust course. I'm not going to do that, because sticking on our path is going to create the motions that we want and the success that we're desiring. So I'd love to hear your takeaways in the comments on our social media. And until we connect on the next episode, go create full funnel freedom. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Full Funnel Freedom podcast. You can continue to support us by leaving us a review and a rating, sharing this episode with a couple of sales leaders in your network who you care about. I'd love to connect with you. I'm easy to find, Hamish Knox on LinkedIn. Also, if you'd like a free 15-minute call with me, go to www.hamish.sandler.com/how-to-sandler. Until we connect on the next episode, go create full funnel freedom.